What's up everybody, it's Robin Gaming here. So my apologies because I haven't really been uploading a lot recently. I'm in a very busy period at the moment, so I hope you can kind of understand that. With that being said, Uncharted 4 Thieves End has been out for a few weeks now. I've beaten the game 4 times, managed to get my Platinum trophy, and I've got a Platinum in all the other Uncharted games as well. And I finally made up my mind on in what order I would place all the games in the series, and that is what this video is going to be about. It's going to be my top 5 Uncharted games in this series, from the console games to Uncharted Golden Abyss included as well. This is my personal order in which I would place the games. It's going to be purely based on the single player. Multiplayer did ultimately not affect in which, how I would pretty much rank these all, but with that being said, for now, let's just get into the list. This is my top 5 Uncharted games. Enjoy. So at number 5, this was honestly the easiest pick out of them all. Can be very short and clear about this. It's Uncharted Golden Abyss. It's a very good PS Vita game that I, definitely enjoyed. A solid game on that platform, but that being said, it didn't necessarily really come close to any of the console ones. And just purely the setting, the gameplay, the story, it is very good. And once again, it is sufficient for the platform that it was on, which was the PS Vita. It was hands down one of the better PS Vita games I played that was, I guess, resemblant to a real console game, not just in the way it looked, also in the way it played in the presentation, but the story just wasn't up to par. The gameplay in the end didn't play as smoothly and as great, and the setting wasn't very exciting either because it was once again just a jungle. So with that being said, Golden Abyss, I'd say it's a must-have if you own a PS Vita, but it's not necessarily a must-have as an Uncharted game. I'd say you're not really missing out too much if you never play this, even though you are an Uncharted fan. So number 5, Uncharted Golden Abyss. Then we get to number 4, and this has always been one of the more controversial ones because some people look at this game as being one of the best in the series, an Uncharted game that they really loved, but at the same time there's that probably vast majority, including me, that looks at this game as being a slight disappointment, and the game I'm talking about is of course Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good game, one of the best that came out last generation on the PlayStation 3, and it's probably also the Uncharted game that I myself put the most time into, with a very fun multiplayer mode that had its flaws but at the same time was super enjoyable. And the game does some things really well, like for example Drake's backstory with Sully, really explaining that, the more personal approach. We have the set pieces like the burning chateau, the crashing plane, the boat, some of these moments where you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm actually playing this. It did that all amazingly well, definitely, but at the same time, when I think about Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, it's always the flaws that come forward and that I get reminded of, like for example the pacing in the first half that was very bad, I would say, just sometimes felt super slow and boring to the point where I remember playing the game on the very first day that I received it, and just by the time I got to like France or Syria thinking, man, I want to take a break right now, and that's not what I expected at all. I thought I would love this game so much that I would want to keep playing and stuff, and that never really happened, and in all the playthroughs that continued, I still got the same feeling. The first half of the game is very, badly paced in my opinion. Locations jumped all over the place constantly. Every few chapters you'd be in a different area, and they would do it with these weird black transitions to the point where it didn't feel natural anymore at all, where they just had a list with locations that they wanted you to visit and crazy set pieces to go to, but they didn't really know how to connect them all very well. Then we have the weak villains, in my opinion, some of the weakest in the series. Marlowe and Talbot, both of them in my opinion very underdeveloped. They could have been more than they actually turned out to be. And then we get into the more nitpicky stuff like the shooting mechanics and the AI that seemed even worse than in the previous games. It's never been very good, but Uncharted 3 once again, yeah, sometimes I felt like the enemies really didn't know what they were doing at all. So with that being said, Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, once again, don't get me wrong, it's a good game, but at the same time it's the Uncharted game that I look at as being slightly rushed and the more disappointing game in the series, where it had its potential but in the end didn't really live up to that. So number 4, Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. Now then we get to the number 3, and the funny thing about this one is it's the complete opposite of what I just described with Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. This was a game that wasn't trying to be super ambitious with crazy set pieces all the time, all out epicness. No, it was a super self-contained story on one island, and of course I'm talking about the beginning of the series, Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Yeah, what can I say, I just really appreciate it for what it is. It's this amazing, as I said, self-contained story, probably one of the best plots in the series, where you really uncover what's going on as you move forward throughout the game all the time. It has a more mysterious tone to it at times, it has a cool twist at the end, great villains from Roman Navarro and especially Eddie Raja, that I think is still one of the best ones in the franchise. And in the end, yeah, Uncharted Drake's Fortune didn't try to be crazy, but what it did, it pulled it all off, you know, I would say amazingly well. It's an amazing game that I really truly enjoyed playing. So at number 3, Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Now this is probably the decision that you are most interested in, and of course the one that I struggled the most with making. The following 2 games to me are both 10 out of 10 games that I truly enjoyed a lot, but in the end I had to make a decision, and at number 2 I decided to put Uncharted 4 A Thieves End. Now it's very hard to do that, because if you just look at it objectively, Uncharted 4 does so many things much better than the previous games in the series. Like purely gameplay wise, the platforming is improved, the combat feels much better, the grappling hook that they added, purely the mix in terms of gameplay, where there's now a much bigger emphasis on platforming and not really as much anymore on pure gun combat the whole time killing enemies. Then graphically we look at it and it looks so much better than the previous games in the series, obviously, but at the same time, you know, there are still a couple of things that I could, I guess, not really like complain about, but in the end that I would have liked to see being a tiny bit different, like that it had its slower moments in, for example, Scotland in the first chapter of Madagascar, where I wasn't enjoying myself as much. It missed a tiny bit of impact at the end in my personal opinion, which I, you know, talked about in my spoiler cast video. And then there is that approach to jump between locations the entire time that it does in the first half, just like Uncharted 3, that I myself wasn't really the biggest fan of, because it kind of pulls me out a little more to feel like this is not really an adventure, or it just doesn't feel as much that you are actually on that certain journey, I guess. That being said, Uncharted 4 was an amazing conclusion to the series, a game that I really couldn't have wanted to be much better than it actually is. Naughty Dog went out with a bang, went out with one of the best games in this series, and an amazing ending to it as well, where yeah, you know, there's just not much more to ask than that. So at number 2, Uncharted 4 A Thieves End. And then finally at number 1, you already know it by now, it's of course Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Even with Uncharted 4 being out right now, I still look at the second game in the series as being a near flawless game, with a story that just grabs you in the beginning and never lets go, to it has perfect pacing to it, no point of boredom whatsoever. It really is that game that has you moving forward the entire time, where the 2 games that followed, Uncharted 3 and 4, sometimes have you exploring certain areas or being like, let's grab something here and then go back. Uncharted 2, it's never like that. It takes that principle from the first game in the series, which is go, keep moving forward, uncover everything by yourself, and it translates that to a bigger variety in locations, with absolutely mind-blowing set pieces in between, great villains like Lazarevich and Flynn that are constantly chasing you, a new main character in the form of Chloe, of course, that was a great new addition, and all in all, yeah, there are simply almost no flaws I can think of with that game. It is a near perfect game that, in my opinion, was an absolutely awesome experience back in the days, and even now, having beaten it 15 times, whenever I pick it up, whenever I get back into it, I want to keep going. It never fails to entertain me. With that being said, this is my top 5 Uncharted games. Of course, let me know in the comments in what order you would place them all, and then for now, that was it. So thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.